Your flight centre, dream centre, always within reach centre, fast centre, fair centre, power in the air centre. Start young, family fun, offer to run, number 1. Easy pivot done centre. Lucky shot, over the top. One-stop shop, never stop. Your centre, our centre, flight centre. Playing centre for over 40 years. Flight centre.
Welcome to Centre Court. This is our World Cup pop-up show, all thanks to Flight Centre. I'm Bianca Chatfield, and what a World Cup it has been. Joining me from South Africa is my co-host, Madison Brown. Maddie, how are you feeling? Congratulations on making it to the very end and getting to call the final last night. How are you feeling?
Look, I'm over the moon that I got to be part of this, Bianca, an all-female cast and crew for a Netball World Cup. First time ever on African soil. It's been one to remember, but I think every single person behind the scenes that's been working overdrive is tired, ready to have some sleep. From day one, we obviously had 5 a.m. wake-up calls. We did 2 games a day, as well as the pre-shows, the post-shows, working multiple different jobs, trying to get stuff back for home, getting stuff done for on the ground, interviews with teams, and when they're obviously flexible to allow us in. So it's been a whirlwind, but it's been very exciting. And to call that gold medal match, I mean, was unbelievable. I've never obviously been to a World Cup as a player, so to be there as a broadcaster and experience it from a different angle and perspective, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So it was nice to have some Aussies on the ground, taking one for the team, and yeah, it was a pleasure to be a part of it.
Well, plenty of time to sleep when you get back on that plane later on today, your time. Let's get to the weekend that was, and let's talk about the week that happened and how our 2 finalists came to get into the finals. We're going to start off with England's journey. Obviously, they were in very good form. They made it all the way until coming up against Australia, really, and wasn't that a match when they beat the Diamonds by 1 to really shake up what was happening in those semi-finals and the finals. And then when we flip it over to Australia's journey, they had some really convincing wins early on. That's what we come to expect. The hiccup against England was a surprise to everybody. But then I think it was that semi-final, Mads, against Jamaica for the Australian Diamonds that we thought the pressure was on. We weren't sure whether the Diamonds had it in them to really be able to take down Jamaica, who had had all this fuss about them, that they were going to be the world champions at the end of this tournament. But they did, and it's probably one of the best games I think I've seen the Diamonds play in that semi-final in the lead up to the final. What were your thoughts on it?
Absolutely, B. I mean, you know, you saw that England match, and I think we were all a little bit caught off guard. It's not that we didn't think England would be up there, but just consistently over the 4 quarters, we kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit. The coaches were a little bit stagnant on their moves, and you thought, oh, you know, this is quite interesting. We've rotated a lot. Maybe we're holding back on something, or maybe we're just figuring out some things. But you're right, that semi-final against Jamaica, the Sunshine Girls, they were touted to absolutely take the whole tournament. They were on fire early. They had all this depth coming off the bench, which is something that Jamaica haven't obviously had in previous campaigns. And you thought, oh my goodness, they are going to be an unstoppable machine. But then the Diamonds, they came out strong. They had an excellent start, and starts had been something that hadn't really been going well even in some of the earlier rounds. And then all of a sudden we saw these rotations coming off the bench from the coaches, and you're like, oh, they've had these extra little special, moments and moves up their sleeves, and they utilize them at the most critical moments. And then that grand final, I mean, outstanding the fact that we could have put anyone on court at any moment to obviously perform. I think some of the commentators were like, how do you guys literally completely change your entire shooting circle and continue to not only compete but push ahead? Like, blown away. I mean, we obviously had our starting lineup of Wood and Conan really dominate early. They weathered the storm, but Austin and Garvin came on and shone brightly as well.
I think there's something in the Diamonds culture, and you know, you've been a part of it as well, where you can never rest on your laurels. You're never automatically just part of that starting 7. You always have to fight for your position. So whether you're starting, you're not really relieved that you're in that starting position, because you know as soon as you don't perform, someone else is ready to go to take your spot. So I feel like that's just something that's bred into the Diamonds culture. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I think there's something about the fact that we have those rolling subs in SSN. Yes. I would love to actually see that rule implemented in international. I'm kind of sick of seeing people go, oh, my finger, oh, my knee, oh, I need to come off, I'm injured. Like, let's just have the rotation, or let's just have them stand in a box. We know they're about to come on. Let's do it. But the way that our Diamonds transitioned on court seamlessly, I do think comes down to that rotating rolling sub in SSN. They also know that they can be role players. It's not so much about a starting 7 and, a bench anymore. I think that's been in Australian culture for quite some time. It is, you've got a role. You might come on for 5 minutes. You might come on for 10. You might be on for the first half. You might start. You might finish. Like, there's just so many elements that I think SSN has helped in our international netball, and these players just have this incredible mindset like, well, I just got to go out, I've got to do what I need to do, and then when I come off, the coaches speak to these players as well. You see them go up and go, it's not anything you're not doing, and these players don't go to, oh my goodness, what have I been doing wrong, that's why I'm off. It's like, we just need a new set of legs on. We just need a new little difference. This player provides something slightly different, but you did your job and we're really happy. So it's a great change.
Well, and it was a huge performance by the Diamonds to get the win by 16 goals in the end. And it was actually really refreshing, I think, to see them be able to enjoy, not necessarily enjoy the whole last quarter, but enjoy a lot of moments in that final 5 minutes where they knew they had it and they'd worked hard enough to get it. Mads, I want to take you back to some comments made by English coach Jess Thirlby and also Helen Housby pre this game, because they spoke about, Jess Thirlby said that she thought there was a team of individuals, the Australian Diamonds, and that they were an actual team playing together. Interesting to note that you say that pre a big final. Helen Housby said they beat this Australia because they were fitter and they were stronger, and interesting to even say that and poke the bear when potentially you're going to face the Diamonds again. I was shocked to hear that. From a media perspective, I loved it, but I was shocked to hear that, because why would you give them that ammunition on top of them wanting to beat you anyway?
Well, they spoke about that last night and said, the second they read those things, they wrote it out, they stuck it up and said, not that we need any more motivation, but we know the work we've put in. How dare anyone question our fitness, our unity? And as you said, risky behaviour in poking the Diamonds bear. But, that 1 goal loss, as I said, part of me at times was like the Diamonds created those opportunities for England. And we a lot of the time when we have losses, we lose against ourselves because we haven't been clinical. We've made risky errors. I thought they were really interesting comments, and they definitely fueled the fire for the Diamonds. And I guess you look at the result and think, you know what, maybe we'll zip it next time.
Well, let's get into Maddie's Minute. Thanks to Flight Centre, your Deals for Everyone Centre, playing centre for over 40 years. Mads, what have you got for us?
Well, I wanted to just give a slight recap. We had 60 games, 16 nations over 10 days in South Africa, and 1 world champion. And within that world champion team, what some people might not have seen when it went to air, but when they stood behind the podium, there was not only just 12 players and the staff that was on the bench, it was a full team entourage. The 15 players, those 3 replacement players. And I wanted to give kudos to them, because I've been in that position. It's been hard. You go away, you literally watch this team and these players living out your dream right in front of you, and you're sitting there wishing it was you, but having to do this team sacrificial role and going, well, we're so happy for you. We're training hard. We're giving you all the love, support, and extra bits that you need. So I wanted to shout out to Ruby Bakell-Doran, to Underwhelming, and Kate Maloney. Throughout the entire tournament, I saw the work. They were coming out. They were bringing things to the bench. They sat there in that secondary bench. They supported. Credit to them as people and who they are to be in that position and obviously weather that storm. I think the addition of these replacement players to potentially come in. We saw New Zealand have to go to their replacement player list because they obviously lost Nweki. So I think it's great that we've got this addition, but kudos to those three wonderful women because, it shows what awesome and kind of personalities and people they are to play that role, and to see them stand on the dais and get a gold medal as well, I thought was outstanding. And I was like, you know what? Netball, we've come a long way, and I was really proud to kind of see them up there as well.
Oh, that's so well said. I totally agree with you. That was Maddie's Minute, all thanks to Flight Centre. It's now time for Take 5. I'm going to throw a few questions at you, Maddie. Firstly, let's take a look at the final standings and where all of the countries finished, because there has been some interesting results. South Africa, their home World Cup, finishing 6th, being beaten by Uganda in that final game. What an impressive performance from Uganda.
Oh, I mean, Ruth Meme, who was part of our commentary team from Uganda, was like, the whole town there's fireworks happening in the country. That, you know, from one street to the other street, they are over the moon. This is huge for their country. And didn't they perform when they needed to? Obviously, South Africa had invested a lot of money. They'd been criticised for obviously sacking their coach only a couple of months out because they lost to Uganda at the Commonwealth Games, brought North Palmer back in, and still lost, obviously, in those final placing games. But outstanding. And there was obviously some really good moments, I think, within the tournament as well. I mean, we saw Tonga playing in their first World Cup. They were unbelievable. They won some hearts over. We saw a proposal at the end of the game from one of their players. But a few standout players, I think, for me was Ellenarie Vandenberg for South Africa. We potentially could see her on our Australian shores. Youngster, shooter, can play goal attack, can play goal shooter, really calm and composed. Also got not a bad range shot.
And how tall is she actually? I'd love to know how tall she is.
I think she's about 190
Wow.
low, by 180. So she's up there, but she's also quite dynamic. So yeah, she's got a really good skill set. Veve, although we've seen her in SSN, she impressed a lot of people. She was up the top for intercepts, and she played centre. So she was top for intercepts in the entire tournament, and then third was Courtney Bruce, obviously. And defenders, there were some really Kwagwan, she played for Zimbabwe. She won some hearts over. She got lots of ball. There were some outstanding individual performances, but also team performances. And that's the big thing about a Netball World Cup. It's great to see some of these smaller nations play against their idols from the top 4 nations. I still would like to think maybe we could rejig it and have maybe 2 pools. I'd love to see Australia, top nation. I'd love to see us play Uganda, South Africa, New Zealand. There's some of the nations we didn't play throughout the whole tournament. So, yeah, I think maybe a rejig to make sure it's competitive. Of course, we were still the best, don't get me wrong. But, I think maybe a rejig so that those smaller nations really get to test themselves against the same capabilities rather than having a real big discrepancy in some of those early matches.
And I think, as you said last episode, that being able to, if it's possible financially, to be able to extend the tournament from 10 days to possibly even 14, just to give everyone a little bit more rest, because the skill level certainly did change as some of those nations who are less experienced get exhausted and tired, and fair enough, because it is such a big task for them to take on. Stacey Marinkovich's coaching. I know there's been so many, not so much question marks recently in the way she has coached that team. We know she's won everything other than the World Cup, but I personally believe she was brilliant. The move she made when she pulled the trigger, what were your thoughts?
Outstanding. And I said to her after the game, I said, Stacey, like tremendous effort, like weathered the storm. There was so much pressure and weight on that team's shoulders when they were going into that semi-final against Jamaica. The whole weight of a nation going, well, you know, this is the worst we've ever finished off in the pool games, and are you going to make the gold medal match? We've never missed it. And they just stood up. Like when it came to time to play, they came out firing. And as I said, I think, you know, that loss against England, we didn't make some moves. And then all of a sudden in the semi and the grand final, we made changes. We weren't sitting on our hands. We injected players. We put them on in critical moments, and every single player stood up. For me in that grand final, Kira Austin, 35 minutes, she had nearly the same amount of goal assists as Liz Watson for the entire game. That shows how pivotal her impact was. She shot 15 out of 16. Sophie Garben came on, and there'd been question marks about her. I think the people who started in Conan and Wood, they weathered the storm. They took on some of those pressure moments, but then the game was still in the balance, and we could just rotate. Liz Watson was outstanding. Courtney Bruce, exceptional, finishing 6 games for the grand final. And Jo Weston was a little silent assassin, I thought, at times, niggling in there, getting her little tips and pick up ball. But overall, even Jamie Lee Price impressed me. The entire Diamonds team just knew exactly what to do right in the critical moments, and executed to absolute perfection. From the players to the staff, they knew their game plan, and they were on song when they really needed to be.
And what do you think about the New Zealand Silver Ferns? There was so much talk around what they could bring, and that they were really going to be an unknown quantity, potentially take it all out, because they'd had 6 weeks prep, more than any other side. Ended up finishing 4th, their worst result ever at a World Cup. Where do you think the New Zealand go from here? How do they improve?
Well, I think when Nweki went down through the week, that completely reshuffled and rejigged their entire team. She's a huge part of their success. So, we talk about those replacement players, but she's probably one of them that, not that many players are replaceable. There's always going to bring something different, but she really changed the whole dynamic of what they could offer, I think, at the campaign. They looked strong early on, but the wheels did start to fall off for them. And as you said, their worst Netball Cup result in history. For me, I think it actually comes down to when we parted ways with them. And, SSN was born in a way. We've embraced the rest of the world and said, come play on our shores. We haven't, taken a step back in wanting to make them better. We've gone, you know what, if we're going to be the best on this world stage, we're going to make the rest of the world better. And New Zealand obviously said, no, our players cannot play in Australia. We're going to hold them here. So I actually think that has played a bit of a part in this result for them. We were talking off air, wouldn't it be great to potentially have maybe 1 or 2 of their franchises within our mix potentially down the future? Because, I think we are blooding the rest of the world, and it's great to see from a world stage, the most hotly contested Netball World Cup. Yes, Australia still won, and it's the 3rd time in history the Diamonds have done it back to back. But I think it would be great if they kind of came to the party and joined that Trans-Tasman flavour again, because I think they are really missing out, not only playing against us, but also playing against the likes of the Jamaicans, the South Africans as well. So it'll be interesting to see what direction they look to going down in the next couple of years.
Yes, I agree with you. Let's go from 8 teams to 10 teams. Add in 2 New Zealand teams. That's going to change the world of SSN and netball in the world, to be honest. All right, final one for you over there. Now, on the ground, you would have seen many familiar faces, I'm sure, in the crowd. And we know in the Suncorp Super Netball that the contracting window, they can't officially sign contracts, but everyone is allowed to talk to everybody. What coaches from Super Netball did you spy in the crowd?
Well, there was plenty of SSN coaches within the crowd. Dan Ryan was there halfway through the final week and came to watch some of the big games. Tanya Obbs was there. Obviously, Kathy Fellows was coaching Fiji, so she'd been there the entire tournament. New coach Tracy Neville of the SEN franchise, she was on the ground, and I'm sure trying to look at everything she possibly could potentially get her fingers at. We saw Bryony Akel assistant coaching for Tonga as well. Julie Fitz came later on in the week. So just no representation from Queensland or the Melbourne Vixens, but plenty of familiar faces within the crowd, and I'm sure they were doing some little chit-chats behind the scenes, as obviously they can officially have those conversations today. But, one thing I am really excited about is, I know we've said that the pressure obviously on these players not knowing, but for this moment, I think we could potentially see a lot of big names move. Maybe this is what the sport needs, having all players off contract. But there's a lot of whispers on the ground who could potentially coming, who's in Australia, being in Australia. So, yeah, word on the Cape Town streets is there are some big names on the move.
Oh, maybe that opens us up for our Centre Court, not World Cup pop-up show, but our SSN trade pop-up show that we need to do coming up. So I don't want to say this is our final episode because who knows what is going to come in the next couple of months with all the netball that's going to be happening, all the netball news. But thank you so much, Maddie, for taking the time out in Cape Town. Safe travels home. I can't wait to have you back on the desk here. Thank you to everyone at Sports Entertainment Network for putting this show together, and a big thanks to Flight Centre. We will see you again soon.